Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and as Reform UK's candidate for the Wellingborough by-election, Ben Habib tells the Tories to stand aside for them, I'd like to take a look at the narrative that they are trying to promote, as some are claiming that Reform UK could pull votes from Labour, and especially so if Nigel Farage returns to lead them. But what does the data say on this? But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So I genuinely laughed out loud when I saw this tweet from Ben Habib yesterday. He said, "This is why the Conservatives," and he tagged in the Conservatives' Twitter handle, "should not split the Reform UK vote. In all respects, a vote for the Tories is a vote for Labour. In the national interest, the Tories should stand down against Reform UK." So this party of people, none of whom even have parliamentary experience, much less government experience, are saying that the party which has won this constituency 5 times in a row should not contest the seats that they won at those last 5 general elections, and instead stand down for a party who has never come close to winning a parliamentary seat and is not likely to for some time to come. You know, either in its current form or its 2019 Brexit Party incarnation. I actually couldn't help myself, laughed out loud. But what is the purpose? It's a message which mirrors that of the Conservatives themselves. They are making the point, with much more justification, that it's Reform UK splitting their vote. After all, let's say the Conservatives did stand out, you know, just for a laugh. Let's say Rishi Sunak, you know, look, I ain't winning this one. All right, just for a laugh, Ben, me old China, I'll stand down for you. Let's see what you've got. Reform UK wouldn't come close to challenging Labour. Right now, the Conservatives don't look close to challenging Labour themselves, and they are the presumed incumbents. You know, the bookies are giving no tempting odds on a Labour win at all. I put my sizable bet on Labour just because I said I would. I'll get next to nothing on it. But that is because the bet is not really a risk unless something spectacularly unpredictable happens. Don't bet the farm on it, for goodness sake. But at the moment, the odds are reflecting the fact that Labour are going to win it really quite comfortably. But also, there are lots of people who will vote Conservative, or might be prepared to vote Conservative under certain circumstances, who won't consider voting Reform UK at all. Reform UK only appeal to a relatively small section of the population. They get amplified by friends and supporters in the media. But they really only, if they didn't have that unjustified level of attention in the media, they'd be nowhere. And it's because most people vote pragmatically for a realistic winner. Even those who find Reform UK appealing won't vote for them because they know they can't win. And I suspect those directing Reform UK's campaign know that. They're saying this because these privately educated spivs simply never developed beyond playground taunts. Like, I watch them sometimes and see 2 irate school children having a pop at each other in the playground. You're splitting our vote. No, you're splitting our vote. It's that level of maturity. But in reality, vote splitting is not something any political party does. It's a feature of first past the post. Anyone who complains of votes being split and does not support proportional representation is either a hypocrite or a fool, possibly both. But there's another side to this tweet as well, an undertone. What it's trying to do is shore up another narrative that's flying around, that voters in Wellingborough and across the country would prefer Labour to the Conservatives, but would seriously consider Reform UK as an alternative to both. They're using their friends and supporters in the media to push this line quite heavily at the moment. Anyone browsing the comments of this channel will have noticed that there's been a similar trend, an upturn in people posting those lines here as well. They're out in force to get this message out to as many places as possible. There's news of a focus. I haven't seen the details of this focus group, by the way, but I've seen reference to it bobbing about on social media, which suggests, oh, they've got these people, and they all said, oh, these people said they voted Labour, and these people said they voted Conservative, and they're now prepared to vote Reform UK, as if Reform UK can pull voters equally from the Conservatives and Labour. But focus groups are not representative. And it's not just that they're too small to be representative. You've got like 6 people on them. They're not designed to be representative. People who get focus groups together for some genuine purpose, they know they're not representative. They're designed to get detailed views in a way you can't get in a poll. from a particular type of voter. So you deliberately skew the focus group because you're interested in what a particular type of voter thinks about certain issues. But most people don't understand polling methods, which is why this device is being misused. The idea that Reform UK can pull votes from both dissatisfied Labour and Conservative voters. But how does it stack with reality? Well, YouGov provide details when they publish their polls, a bit of a breakdown in their tables. It's one of the things that attracts me to them. In the data tables from YouGov's latest poll, it shows the number of 2019 Conservative, Labour and Lib Dem voters and who they intend to vote for at the next election, should that happen, say, tomorrow. It shows that the Conservatives are currently only retaining 57% of their 2019 voters, with Labour retaining 83%. It also shows that 20% of 2019 Tory voters will vote Reform UK, but only 2% of 2019 Labour voters would. Now, straight away, that sounds like for every vote Labour lose to Reform UK, the Conservatives lose 10. Only it's worse than that for the Tories, because that's 20% of the Tory vote and 2% of the Labour vote, but Labour didn't get anywhere near as many votes as the Tories in 2019. So 20% of the Tory vote is worth more than 10 times as much as 2% of the Labour vote. Basically, Labour do not need to pay a blind bit of attention to Reform UK. And for those who think, well, yeah, I mean, even 2% of the former voters could be a big deal in a tight contest. No. Two things to consider. First, I mean, you can't chase after a small loss of votes, but particularly if they're being attracted by an extreme party, by doing something that costs you way more votes somewhere else. Like sometimes you just have to shrug your shoulders and work out a pitch that gathers the most useful votes, which isn't always like the most votes in every area anyway. Second, we have a first past the post system. The number of votes you win is magnificently irrelevant. Magnificently irrelevant. What matters is that in just over 320 seats around the country, you win by one more vote than your closest rival. The actual number of votes, irrelevant. It's the comparison of votes. Did you get more than anyone else in that constituency? Don't even need 50% of the votes. So as the Tories are Labour's rivals in most seats, if Labour lose 100 votes to Reform UK in a particular seat and the Tories lose over 2,000, that's good for Labour. But there's another argument, a speculative argument, and this has been thrown around as well, and this is all part of this undertone. But if Nigel Farage were to come back and lead Reform UK, he could pull lots of votes from Labour. Now, I'm not sure what these people think Nigel Farage has as an appeal to Labour voters specifically, which doesn't exist in the current Reform UK lineup. But shall we see the data? Because by happy coincidence, YouGov carried out a survey of voting intention at the end of last November, so about 5 or 6 weeks ago, in which they asked how people would vote with Richard Tice as leader of Reform UK, as he currently is, and then how they would vote if Nigel Farage were the leader. So with Richard Tice as leader, 2% of 2019 Labour voters say they would vote Reform UK next time, which is the same as it is now 6 weeks later. But if Nigel Farage were leader, only 1% would vote Reform UK. The other 1% go back to the Labour pile. So that survey suggests that Labour would lose even fewer voters to Reform UK with Farage as leader. Now, the numbers which Labour are losing to Reform UK, even hypothetically, are so small, you don't want to read too much into them. But not only is there no evidence that Farage would pull votes from Labour, there is evidence here that he would get more voters to flock to Labour. So Nigel Farage, as leader of Reform UK, could actually be a recruiting sergeant for Labour. And that is because Nigel Farage is a classic niche populist leader. Really well supported, really popular amongst his target cult, but wildly unpopular amongst the general population. You know, a successful populist leader needs to be wildly popular amongst their cult and not unappealing amongst everyone else. The rest of the population, you ideally want them to shrug their shoulders at you. He doesn't. You know, he's very divisive. However, I will point this out. That same poll, which shows that Labour would actually retain even more 2019 voters if Nigel Farage stepped up, said that the Tories would lose a lot more votes to Reform UK if he were to return. Basically, Reform UK and especially Nigel Farage are a threat to the Conservative Party and only the Conservative Party. Their status amongst Labour strategists is that of useful if dangerous idiots. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.